welcome everyone to the Hector and Mike experience. Common sense in an uncommon world. And common sense would say that next week, the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee will be a great show. Uncommon sense says maybe they ought to cancel the show. You can't beat what's being done already with anything that you do with this whole thing with Joe Biden and the aftermath of a disastrous debate performance. Hector, it's we used to call it back home in Providence beating a dead horse. They are just, his own people, his supporters, the people that, were with him, that loved him. I've never seen people turn on someone as quickly as this. It's truly amazing.
Well, it's interesting because the way it's happening is people were upset over his performance, right? People were concerned. People were, oh my lord, can he continue on? Then it switched over to nope, he's our guy. It was a bad night. You can't discount him for everything he's done. It's just one bad night, and now that amount of support is just falling like dominoes. You've got congressional members now within his own party. You've got U.S. senators within his own party. You've got donors who are now coming out against him and saying, we need someone else. You had just today you had George Clooney, Rob Reiner come out, and the one that I found very interesting was, and mind you, this is let's go with George Clooney and Ryan. George Clooney just raised a ton of money for him about
30
a
million.
week and
30 million.
about $30 million about
Mm-hmm.
2 weeks ago,
Mm-hmm.
and now he's out against him. But the other one that's surprising is Nancy Pelosi is now coming out against him and saying that the window is getting smaller and smaller, and so the at what point does he continue to stay in there and continue to fight all his people, people who are asking him to come out, or did he say, okay, I've got to now step down and not run for reelection?
Right.
And I think there's another concern is if he decides not to run for reelection, and everyone's going to point it to his cognitive decline, right? I think there people are now commenting whether he's got Parkinson's or not. But how does he stay in office? How does he stay continuing to run the
Mm-hmm.
White House, remain president, if it is because of health reasons? If
Right.
he's not fit enough to run for reelection, how is he fit enough to remain in office and remain president?
I would refer all of those questions to Series 2 or Season 2 of Veep. Specifically, I think it's episodes 1 through 6, where all of this takes place. Literally, all of this takes place. Except the president, it wasn't the president, it was his wife, and Julia Louise Dreyfus, who was talking about how she's the first woman vice president, and does the president drop out, not drop out, and all these people. I mean, literally, it is comedy imitating or reality imitating comedy is what it is. First of all, to Democrats, please, please, please listen to whatever George Clooney tells you to do when it comes to politics. From his lips to God's ears, if he believes in him. George Clooney was the classic person who in 2016, sitting there, and they asked him about Donald Trump. He said, "There's no way." He just laughed and said, "There's no way Donald Trump would ever be president." And then, interestingly, that's the clip everybody remembers. But when you play the clip, it also then goes into his little talk about it won't happen because the press is going to keep questioning him. The press is going to keep questioning him. Ironically, all of a sudden, the press is now questioning Joe Biden. The press is questioning Karina Jean-Pierre. And what's happened is they're all insulted by the fact that the press, which is their lapdogs, are now asking them what you might call journalistic questions. And so, I would say listen to George Clooney if you want. Do it at your own peril. The thing about Pelosi that just cracks me up, and maybe it's a victim of her age. Okay, I don't want to get into ageism here, but she keeps talking about is he up for it? Is he up for it? My question is she up for it? Joe Biden has said numerous times and repeatedly since he walked off the stage in Atlanta and went to a rally at the Waffle House and repeatedly in numerous different venues that he is not dropping out, that he is going to continue to run, and he says he's going to win. 2 out of 3 is not bad, but I mean, he has been very clear. So what is Nancy not comprehending when she says, he's got to make a decision? When a guy tells you, I'm running, I'm not dropping out, that to me sounds like a decision. Maybe, I don't know, maybe it's not getting through to her. But it just is a kind of thing that they just keep piling on. And honestly, from a political perspective, I think he's the best candidate they have. I mean, everybody says Gavin Newsom. Everybody says what's her name, Gretchen Whitmer, Kamala. Someone the other day was talking about Michelle Obama. You got to be realistic here. If they drop Joe Biden, and there's a way to do it, he has to agree to it. Um, you know, how do you, as a party that is built on diversity, equity, and inclusion, that is built on reparations, that is built on not equality but equity to make up for past things that happened, how do you take a black vice president and put her on the shelf? You can't. And let me tell you, I mean, she got away scot-free in 2020. Her record in California will come out. Her record on, putting the most black people in jail of any attorney general in the California state history will come out. Her record of incompetence on things like, women who were sexually assaulted will come out. All of that stuff, opposition research stuff, is sitting and waiting. Take that, combine it with the last 3 years and all of the things that she said and she's done and everything else that people laugh at. I mean, you're not going to tell me she's going to be a better candidate than Joe Biden. So I find it interesting the spin that they're doing, and it's almost like they're in the drain circling at this point in time, and I'm loving it.
Well, for political junkies, it's entertaining. I guess there's a lot of guesswork that's happening right now as to what happens, what doesn't happen. I was speaking to someone from Univision yesterday, and they're trying to figure out who the president chooses as a vice, who Donald Trump chooses as a vice president. They're trying to figure out what happens with Biden. Does he stay in? Does he stay out? If so, and it's just it's this round robin of
It's a feeding frenzy.
who becomes a nominee,
Yeah,
and so
yeah.
and I tell them, it's like, look, I don't have any more insight than you do, but we can try to figure out what the pieces kind of look like. And you're right, there is a very difficult position. They're in a very difficult position, and it's how do you bypass Kamala Harris? How do you bypass her? And I don't think you can. I think it's going to be very difficult because you've got so many constituencies that are built upon that they're gonna leave on a percentage. Um, I heard someone else says, well, why can't you just get Gavin and her and make her the vice president again? I was like, well, they're both in the same state. They're both in the same state. You can't have that, first of
and
all.
they both have egos the size of the state of California,
Right.
which by the way, I'm not saying is a bad thing. If you're the vice president of the United States and you're the governor of California, you probably got two pretty big egos there.
Right.
Okay, so I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad thing, but someone suggesting that it's just not realistic of human nature.
Right.
Forget politics. It's not realistic of human nature. How do you say we're gonna elevate the white guy over the black woman who's been there for the last 3 years, and she's going to continue to serve the white guy who's 20 or 30 years younger than Joe Biden? They have two choices: Joe Biden, Kamala Harris. That's their choices, and it only happens if Joe Biden decides he's not going to continue. And if he does that, then to go back to what I started, season 2 of Veep, the president needs to not only not run, but step down and elevate his vice president. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think Joe Biden, and more importantly, Joe Biden's circle, which, by the way, now includes a convicted felon, his son, are going to be adamant about him staying in. Um, Unless there's one person that comes to my mind, and we were talking about this before, that I think would come in and maybe change the landscape if Biden were to step down, and that's John Fetterman, of all people. I mean, he would. I think at this point, with the circus that has gone on, John Fetterman walking in and just saying whatever he thinks and whatever he wants would be so refreshing to people, and that they would actually vote for this guy. I think Republicans would vote for this guy because he's been kind of a little different than what he was when he was running, and if he were to run, he's got puts in the bank Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan, the blue wall that they need in the Midwest. So, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think Joe Biden, when it's all said and done, is going to be the nominee of the Democrat Party, and I think it's going to be a dogfight. I mean, I don't see this as many Republicans do as this is going to be a cakewalk. This is going to be a dogfight.
Well, and that raises an interesting question, which is, how is it that it's a dogfight when you've got someone who you've got 72% of the population that thinks he's too old to run for president, versus Donald Trump, who versus the Republican candidate?
Well, I think it's a matter of people. This is usually presidential elections is usually 40 to 42 on one side, 40 to 42 on the other side, and you got a small group in the middle that you got to split the baby with and get
Right.
51% of that vote. But this is an election where, and I've seen them in other places, where the sides are so polarized
Hmm.
that, I mean, you look at it and you say all of these people that are saying Joe Biden is not only unfit to
Right.
run for reelection, but unfit to be president, they will vote for him anyway
Right.
because their animosity and what have you towards Trump is so strong. And I think what you're seeing too is the same thing for President Trump. His people are rock solid, and it doesn't matter how many indictments the Justice Department throws at him, how many convictions these kangaroo courts come through with, they're going to be with him 110%.
Yeah. Well, and
They're
John
not
Fetterman,
moving.
right, and Senator John Fetterman out of Pennsylvania had some advice for, especially because of the electoral chances, right? Electoral chances that Joe Biden's got. And I mean, to go back and, this was his comment that he made about, increasing his chances of winning. He goes, maybe, and I'm quoting here, maybe we can encourage President Biden to go bang a porn star, and that'll increase his chances of winning a little bit more.
Well, it's a unique strategy, and and I think one that most candidates will embrace. Actually, now that I think about it, oh man, yeah. I mean that, and I tell you, I think that's you listen to it, you laugh at it, but there's also that germ of truth to it. I mean, when Donald Trump was convicted in New York in that crazy trial, they blew up the internet with fundraising. In the first minute, I forgot how many millions that they raised.
Yeah.
So there's a little germ of truth to John Fetterman's kind of tongue-in-cheek comment there. It's just a crazy election season. Like I said, next week the Republicans are in Milwaukee. They're going to have a lineup of people that are going to be different than what I think a lot of people are not used to or haven't seen at Republican conventions. Usually, it's the
Like
traditional
rappers.
thing, like rappers. I mean, someone called me last week and told me a couple of people, and I had to go look them up on the internet, and because it's not my thing, and a couple of them look pretty entertaining actually. So it's going to be interesting, but I think what you're going to see next week is kind of ordinary people, and I think this is smart, ordinary people who have been impacted by the policies of the last 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
Amidst all of this process stories, what what the candidates cannot forget, especially on the Republican side, not just for president, but right on down the line, is what has happened to the middle class, to average Americans over the course of the last 4 years in terms
Yeah.
of what they pay for their house because of interest rates, what they pay for their cars because of interest rates, what they have to pay to put gas in the tank, what they have to pay for food, what they have to pay for home insurance if they can get it, all of that kind of stuff. And now add into it, in certain places like California, and New York, all of the rampant crime that is taking place that is indiscriminate, does not care where you are, does not care what color you are, does not care what economic class you are. If you're in the wrong place at the wrong time, you can be a victim of crime because of the laws that have been passed. They got to keep remembering that's what people are going to vote on. This other stuff is like, the halftime show in a
Yeah.
football game. Um, it's these other things that affect people every single day that the candidates, and again, not just president, right on down the line, need to focus on.
Yeah.
And let me just give you one great example of this. This is what we did in 1998. I was back home in Rhode Island, and I was working for the then governors of Rhode Island, Connecticut, and Massachusetts. Three Republican governors that we had, moderate Republican governors. They were running for reelection. They impeached Bill Clinton for the Monica Lewinsky thing. He doesn't get convicted, and Republicans around the country keep running on Bill Clinton and Monica Lewinsky. The three guys that I was working for, we focused on things like jobs. We focused on things like the environment because it was New England and that's a huge
Hmm.
issue there. We talked about things people care about that impact them. And all three of them, even though Republicans didn't do well in 1998, all three of them won their reelection. That's what Republicans got to continue to do. Talk about the things that impact people:
Right.
immigration, economy, safety. Those things are basic fundamentals that are just falling apart. And they need, this other stuff is fun. This other stuff is speculation, and you're watching it and kind of laugh and everything. But that's what people are going to decide on, I think.
Now, what's your thoughts? There's a lot has been done over the last 2 3 days, looking at the Cook political report, Cook report, looked at all these different battleground states, and you had some that were lean Democrats that are now toss-ups. You've got some that were toss-ups that are now lean Republicans, and it's not by much. It's not by a big margin. It's by 1 to 2 to 3 percentage points, and we'll try to put up a graphic here so that people can see it or a link to it, and so you're beginning to see that shift of a little bit of movement. And like I said, it's not by much,
Mm-hmm.
but it is looking in favor of Republicans. But do you believe that this translates to people who are running in congressional seats, or what do they have to do? Is it that message you just gave right now, or is there some coattails to all this madness that they can take advantage of as they're running for election in a more localized place?
It's a two-pronged approach. Number one, who are your people and make sure they turn out. This is going to be a turnout election. Messaging isn't going to mean that much on the big scale because people are already solidified. So this is going to be a turnout. Remember, I was talking about 42 and 42
Yeah.
group, percent. Who's better able to turn out their 42% of the vote? That's number one. Number two, the message is, while all of these other messages are prevalent right now in the presidential race, I don't think they will be till November. But certainly at the local level, most people don't focus on that. They want to know you always have to answer the question as a candidate to the voter. Let them know what's in it for them. Voters are selfish, and I don't say that in a negative way. They want to know how you, as an elected official, is going to help make their life better. And it can be the garbage is going to picked up on time, the streets are going to get plowed, my taxes aren't going to go up, the cost of chicken isn't going to go up. All of those things are the kinds of things that a candidate needs to talk about. the process stuff is fun to talk about at a dinner table or in the bar or whatever. But when you're knocking on doors or meeting people, you got to talk to them about what they're interested in and what they want to talk about, what's going to make their life better. That does not change.
And I think it's important to note that, for a lot of what we do, whether it's advertisement, it's the precinct walking, as you mentioned, it's the digital media. It's got to be that unified message of this is if you're running to replace someone, this is why we need that replacement.
Right.
Because look at unemployment numbers, look at lost jobs, look at the crime. And I think more so than ever, I think the grassroots operation is going to be very key, because you're going to have, as you have right now. I mean, it's interesting. I've got a couple folks that are running for Congress, and the national news is all dominated by what did Trump say, what did Biden say, what did Pelosi say now, what did I mean, the thing is, you see it trending on social media. It's George Clooney's comments on Joe Biden, as opposed to some of these other more, which I view as important, probably more important issues that impact our daily lives. That is kind of getting pushed by the wayside. And so, this being able to go door to door, being able to go community to community, the town halls, that kind of messaging is probably going to be more key now than ever before. And the other thing too that I found interesting is, this past week I saw the chairwoman of the California Republican Party. They posted out an article where Trump had said, "Hey, make sure you go out and vote early.
Hmm.
Get your ballot in early." And I think
Hmm.
the Trump folks have maybe learned some of their lessons from the years prior about, don't trust that, go to the ballot box. And we all know that, the last elections, there were places in battleground states where they had some pretty bad weather issues, which may have, I'm not saying it cost them the election, but maybe cost them some good votes. And so now they're trying to get themselves prepared to say, hey, go out and vote early,
Right.
get that ballot in early.
Which is smart. I mean, you learn from your mistakes. And one of the things that they faced in 2020 and they faced in 2022 was the repeated message of don't vote early because the other side will find out how you voted or know that you voted, and then they know how many ballots they got to steal. And as you mentioned, in the Southwest, Arizona especially, on election day in 2022, got hammered
Hmm.
by by rain and wind and everything else. And people weren't going to stand in line for that. And what happened was they didn't lose by a whole lot. I mean, the guy who ran for attorney general in Arizona lost by like 400 votes.
Yeah.
So, did it cost them the election? Yeah, it cost them the election. There's no
Right.
doubt about that. And so, I think they've learned from that. The state parties have learned from it. The RNC has learned from it. And so, their whole tactic and their whole approach is completely different this year, which is critical because, like I said, this is from a standpoint of your base, this is a turnout game. You
Right.
want you want to be turning out 90%, 95% plus of your vote, um, and it does help, having worked in Providence, Rhode Island for a considerable number of years, to be able to know how many votes you got in the bank
Hmm.
or in the vault when you go in on election day, and know what you need to get, and I think they've learned that lesson. I give them credit for that. They just have to execute it now. They've got to get people doing that kind of stuff. But that's part of the process.
Yeah, it is part of the process. And so, we're going into the Republican convention is next week. You've got quite a bit of activities, happening between then and Thursday, where it'll end. And in between it, you've got the selection of a VP, um,
Which will
for the
happen this
Republican
weekend.
side.
That'll
Which, I'm
happen
sorry.
this weekend. It'll happen this weekend.
Right.
I think they'll do it before the convention. My guess is they would do it on Saturday in Pennsylvania. Um, I mean, everybody says it's down to uh, the former governor of North Dakota. Sorry, not the one with the dog, but the other guy. um, yeah, Brady gave me a dirty look when he heard South Dakota. It's an automatic reaction with him. Um, but it's Doug Burgum, who's a, I mean, it's kind of interesting. This guy came out of nowhere,
Yeah.
and he was on the debates here. I remember you and I and Luis were up at the Reagan Library, and they had, when was it, September or something like that,
Mhm.
and they had the debate at the Reagan Library, and we're sitting there, and this guy's up there talking, and people are like, "Who is that guy?" I mean,
Mhm.
he sounded normal. He made sense. And I think he connected with people. He definitely connected with the president, President Trump,
Yeah.
um, which is the only, by the way, the only thing that counts.
Yeah.
So I think he's probably one of the top two. I think Marco is one of the top two. There's the whole thing about Florida, but I think Marco brings youth connection into the Hispanic community, and one other group that I think is critically important for 2024 is the church community.
Mhm.
He is very very much well liked and well respected in the church community, which is an important vote for Republicans.
Mhm.
So I think there's a lot. It's like been an audition, though. You got to admit, it's like
Do you think one I was talking to Moises the other day. He still thinks Tim Scott's in there in the mix.
I would love to see Tim Scott in the mix. I think he's a great guy. I mean, he said it. He is a much better advocate for President Trump than he ever was for himself. I remember at the debate we were at, it was kind of like the guy disappeared. I mean, he hardly said anything, but he's a great guy. He's a great principled guy. Um, I think he would be. I think he'd be amazing. I personally, I know this is going to sound crazy. The one I really like is Tulsi Gabbard. I mean, I always liked her as a Democrat. She's pretty plain spoken. She's very direct. Former military, and I just and now that she's kind of moved over into the conservative side, I think that would be an interesting dynamic. I don't think it's going to happen,
Yeah.
but that would be an interesting dynamic. But let's just understand something. Whoever it is, that's great. But if there ever was a description of the word from my olden days, the second banana, whoever that is the second banana. I mean, Donald Trump is top banana here, and that's the way it's going to be, and everybody knows it, and everybody's cool with it. And so they're going to be second banana, but he certainly has some choices to pick from.
Yeah. Well, second banana, but now you're dealing with 4 years if you were to win a
Right.
4-year presidency because he's already served out his other four.
Right.
So second banana ready to make a launch later on. But then you've got the Democratic convention coming up. What's it? 2 weeks after? 2 weeks
No,
after,
no,
right?
it's actually
It's
mid August.
mid
I
August.
guess it's
Okay.
about a month away. Yeah.
Oh, good Lord! I didn't think it was
Yeah.
that much
Yeah, I'm
of a
pretty sure it's like around August 14th or something like that.
man. So how soon do you think they need to make this decision over for Joe Biden? I mean, you
Wait,
can't.
dude, you're getting like Nancy Pelosi now. He
I
made a
know.
decision.
I know. I know. I know. I know. I know. I know. Yes.
He
Yes. Yes.
said, "I'm staying in." It's like, okay, Joe, you're staying in, and everybody still doesn't believe him. I,
But
you know, I
you've got this drum. I mean, I can't see a drum beat going on all the way to the convention. Or I mean, but it's got to be in one way or another. I mean, because the thing is that he's losing more support as he moves along. All right, he said he's staying in. All right, Mike, he's saying he's staying
no,
in. But
I was just thinking if the Republicans were smart, they would call up Joe Biden and say, "Hey, you know what? Give us $50 million and we'll switch spots. You take next week and do the convention, and we'll wait till August. That way, Trump has another month to audition candidates for VP, and Biden gets his convention right away, so he doesn't have to listen for another month. All these people that keep saying, "Well, he's got to make a decision," while he says he makes a decision. So move it. Just do the old switcheroo. Pay a little money to do the switcher. What the heck? It's a Fetterman
but
plan.
but that's the thing is you've got potentially another month of just this slow death march of one way or
Right.
another.
Drip, drip.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, they, I don't know. I mean, they seem to enjoy, and I always thought it was a Republican thing because I've seen this with Republicans a lot in my life. that they enjoy like beating themselves up. I've never seen, Democrats, I've always noticed, are, they may have disagreements, but they're always able to put whatever those disagreements are aside, and on election day, hold the nose, close the eyes, and vote for that Democrat.
Right.
This is the first time I've ever seen them in such a quandary of hand wringing, gnashing of teeth, and everything else that goes on. And um, they, as far as I'm concerned, keep doing it. But it's not doing them any good. It really isn't. I mean, and it's not doing the presidency any good
Right.
because, people keep comparing. I read this story about someone compared it to Lyndon Johnson in 1968. And it was like, yeah, okay, so the sitting president decides not to run for reelection. Well, Lyndon Johnson didn't decide not to run for reelection because of his health. It was because of the Vietnam War and everything that was taking place
Hmm.
and the riots that were happening in America. There were issues. It wasn't personal. Um, in this case, it's all personal.
Right.
I mean, no one's arguing about. No one that wants him to step down is arguing about his policies that have caused this destruction in this country over the last 4 years. They love those policies.
Right.
No energy. Relying on foreign sources for energy. Everything America last. They love those policies. They just don't want him. So it
Hmm.
is all personal in this particular case. And the guy's being, I hate to say it, don't take it wrong, a stubborn old man. And and again, it's like he's got a right to do that. He got elected. So you know what? You're stuck with him. But if you sit around and have these dreams, I mean, I still have dreams that Tom Brady's going to come back. I do. I admit it. Okay, it's the sun, but it's not going to happen. Um, and it's the same thing here. If any of those Democrats are sitting there thinking that they're going to replace Joe Biden with anybody else but Kamala Harris, they're smoking their socks
Hmm.
because there is no way in hell they're going to be able to do that and bypass Kamala Harris, for better or worse. And I think when you take the two of them together, you have one candidate who people know, people kind of like, and now people feel bad for because of his condition, and you got another candidate who makes Hillary Clinton and the warmth factor feel like Mother Teresa,
Yeah.
because people laugh at her. I mean, so what do you want? You want someone you feel bad for or someone you laugh at? And so that's where they put themselves at this point.
Yeah.
So I think, you stay with what is it, the country song, stay with the one who you brought to the dance.
Yeah.
I think that's probably what they should do. Or just
Well,
keep
it's
doing
it's.
this. I mean, just keep doing this for.
I know, but it's got to get to a point. And I know we're going in circles here, but it's got to get to a point where the donors and everybody else is okay. This is our person, and that's it. Because
Doesn't
and I
matter.
just find it. I find it difficult for them to do that because
It's,
once.
why? Let me just interject. There's a whole other thing to this that we haven't talked about. Mainstream media. That's the problem. Is that up until now, Hunter Biden bought a gun, tax fraud, all of this stuff on his computer, no coverage. Now all of a sudden they're covering Joe Biden like they cover other political people. The problem is the people they're covering aren't used to that coverage. They're
Yeah.
used to being protected. And so the press loves this because there's a feeding frenzy. People are watching. They're speculating. What happens if this? What happens if that? The problem that Joe Biden has is not necessarily within the Democrats. It's how do you get the press back into the corral and get
Yes.
him to be your lapdog again?
Hmm.
That's what his challenge is.
Right.
I don't know.
And
I don't know how you do that because I when Jon Stewart comes out and does his thing, which was incredibly funny, his stuff.
it
Um,
was, yes.
I mean, I even laugh at some of his Republican stuff he does, but it was incredibly funny. I mean, the only thing that Joe Biden can thank heavens for is that Saturday Night Live is on hiatus for the summer. Because, again, I would call them and say, come back. But that seriously is the problem he has is the press keeps asking the question. And until enough people that they're asking the question says, quit asking me that stupid question. I'm not answering it. I already did. Joe Biden's our candidate until he says he doesn't want to be. I mean, that simple, that quick, that direct, no commas, semicolons, and further statements. Getting everybody to sing off that same song sheet right now is really difficult. And as long as they
I
can't do
don't,
that, the press is going to go to town.
and it's not. I don't think it'll happen anytime soon. I don't see it. I don't see it stopping because every single day you're getting a new set of people, another cascade of these type of people saying, okay, I think he should step down. I think it's time. I think we love Joe, but he should be doing this. And so the more the more it continues, the more you get these type of stories, and the more he's got to hear it. And the thing is now is, especially after this debate, no matter what he does or where he goes, there's like a microscope on him now.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, did he say something wrong? Did he say something incorrectly? Did he mess up a word? So
And
that
more importantly, what it is there's no forgiveness.
right.
Because what the press would do is they would turn a blind eye towards it. It might be a little blip for a second or two. Now they take it and they analyze it.
Mhm.
Like yesterday, he did a speech on NATO. Or no, I'm sorry, he did a speech on NATO, but it was something different. It was a Congressional Medal of Honor thing of some kind, and he had the teleprompter, and the teleprompter had the directions: call up so and so, and he reads the directions. Now, ordinarily, the press would never cover that because they love the guy. But now, because he's wounded and there's blood in the water, now they turn it into a story. That's the problem that he has right now is that, the things that they ignored, they covered up, let slip, what have you, however you want to call it, they're not going to do anymore. That's the real problem that he has.
Yeah. Well, we'll see how, Michael. Let's see how this goes, and let's end this portion of the discussion here. And so,
Good luck, everybody.